You're listening to Infinite TBR, the podcast where we try not to buy more books. I'm Smack.
And I'm Gabi. Spoiler alert, we're going to avoid major spoilers, and when we can, warn when we're going to discuss a particular book in detail, so you can avoid that part of the episode. You can also check the show notes for time-stamped flags identifying potential spoilers.
Future Gabi here. This time not with spoilers, but with kind of a disclaimer. We made the rookie mistake of recording in front of an open window on a windy day because we live in San Diego, where it is beautiful. Why would you ever close the windows? The answer we have found out since is because you're recording a podcast. So there are a couple spots where there's some wibbly wobbliness, and we apologize for that in advance.
Okay, so we have a to-do list, but you're over here vibrating with a box from Barnes & Noble, so I think first we need to...
So
we're going to do an unboxing.
Yeah, every fall. My mother is a teacher. She's mostly a substitute teacher, but she's certified, and she has an educator number for discounts through Barnes & Noble. And every fall, right, when everybody goes back to school, the educator discount goes up from... I think it's 10% to 25, or it's like 20 to 25. It's like...
That's delicious.
That's a significant... Especially because Barnes & Noble doesn't do a ton of coupons.
No.
Especially for ebooks, which is what I do. So they had 25% off. And then they also had 25% off ebook pre-orders, which, that was incredibly exciting. But I've already gotten those. So I got, like, one from, like, Cherie Priest with like, Small Town Murder and... possibly magic, I'm not sure. Doesn't matter. I really like Cherie Priest.
Okay.
And then, some other stuff. But the box showed up, and it's been so long that I don't remember what's in it.
Let's find out.
And it has sat next to the front door for a week because I was overwhelmed with work, and I kept looking at it every time I went up the stairs, and I was like, at the end of the week, I'm going to look at all of my books. Okay.
Oh, no, we can't cheat.
Oh, okay.
No,
okay, I won't look at the receipt.
Okay.
First one out, though, is Squad by Maggie Takuta Hall and Lisa Sturl. And it is I think it's a YA graphic novel with Mean Girl werewolves.
Yeah, that's on my TBR. Every time I see the title, I think it says squid, and I get excited for, marine bio reasons. And then
it's very, I don't even know how to describe the colors. It sort of reminds me, of an Andy Warhol thing, because it's so vibrant and,
very contrasting.
Yes.
Color.
Oh, I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
That I could probably,
I'm excited to steal that from...
Yeah, well. Next one is The Woodwife by Terry Windling. This is one of my favorite books.
Because they reprinted it.
Yeah, they did another... They recovered it? Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's, a word.
It is now.
But Tor deemed it a Tor essential, and so they...
Oh, yeah, they have a new series of,
Is that what that is?
Mm-hmm, because there's some other book that ended up on that. I remember seeing it at Mysterious Galaxy and thinking, I guess... yeah, there we go.
So, Werner Vinge, A Fire Upon the Deep, Joe Walton, among others.
That's the one I saw.
Yeah, I own that one. Not the, new version or anything.
But...
Yeah.
But we both read The Woodwife, right? It's so good.
It's honestly one of my favorite books. It's one of the few that I have reread.
Same here.
And it's so smart and lovely and gentle, but also very there's
unnerving.
Super unnerving, but there's this emotional strength that comes through, and it's just such a wonderful story about the magic of the Tucson desert.
Yeah.
I love it so much. I love it.
Yep,
and the new cover's really pretty.
Yeah, the new cover.
So
I think that the weird text looks like refrigerator magnets, and that bothers me.
Oh, you know what? I just realized if you turn it sideways, it's like a landscape.
Yeah. What did you think?
I don't know. I was just sideways trees or something.
Oh, no.
It's pretty. No, I bet it's a Tucson.
That is a Tucson sunset.
Yeah. I wonder if
absolutely.
It says...
Let me see if I can...
it's a stock photo.
Figure out what the... Yeah, I don't know what mountain range that is, but I could believe that's one of the... Tucson is really cool because it's nestled between 4 mountain ranges. It's just a box.
They talk about that in the book. I love this book so much. It's so good. It's so good.
It is really everything to love about Arizona, and none of the crap about living in Arizona.
I think there's like 2 parts where somebody's like, oh, the snowbirds or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, that's the only livable part of Arizona.
Yes.
I know you're from
Well,
there,
Flagstaff
and I love you, but,
and
like,
Prescott are good. All the places that aren't quite as deserty are
that's
very
true.
lovely.
Flagstaff is really nice. So what else there's a Mary Oliver book of poems called Dog Songs. There's like a basset hound. Is that a basset? No, that's a beagle. There's a beagle on the front cover. And it's a short little book, but I really like Mary Oliver, and I have just been like dying for some really good poetry. I'm reading some really good poetry at the moment, but like there's something about poetry that is just so calming. It's like an anti-anxiety thing. If you can like sit in a quiet room and read some poetry for a while, it just centers you. I love it. Okay.
So sweet.
Okay. So the most of these, it looks. Oh, there's another Mary Oliver one. Upstream Selected Essays.
It's another landscape.
It is another landscape. It's like very different though. It's sort of like
Forest?
it's
Upstream?
a forest with a stream. Very like Massachusetts or maybe Maine or something. But I'm into Mary Oliver. I think I'm going through a phase. Or maybe
love me a good phase.
I know, or maybe I'm just becoming a lifelong fan. What else is
Why
in
would
here?
they do this?
What?
On the spine, they have the penguin in the middle, and then the penguin on the bottom.
For the 2 Mary Oliver ones. Clearly.
Do better, penguin.
I know. They were not prepared for like bookshelf aesthetic.
They both say New York Times bestseller.
Because she's a New York Times bestseller. That's like the first thing you want to read on a cover.
Sorry.
Okay.
What else?
This one's not as fun. It's called Strongmen, Mussolini to the Present.
That's different.
It's by Ruth Ben Giat. And...
Is it about toxic masculinity and dictatorship?
Yup. So, she lays bare the blueprint leaders from Mussolini to our former president.
Yes.
And the blueprint they followed for the last 100 years. Basically, it's like, I like to be able to recognize that stuff as it's happening. Like all the really shitty political stuff. So there's a similar sort of book, except significantly shorter, called On Tyranny, 20 Lessons from the 20th Century by Timothy Snyder. And it's like a 70-page book, and it's a set of do's and don'ts for pre-autocratic states. And one of them is like, don't empower extra military forces, or like
Oops.
protect institutions because they can't do it themselves. They are inanimate.
Oops.
Yeah. So I definitely recommend that one. I've read it a couple times. Rachel Maddow goes nuts every time somebody talks about it. She loves it.
I just flipped through the back of Strong Men, and the last...
Oh my god, the last like 80
pages is references and notes
and an
index.
Oh
Like,
my God.
this looks very well researched, or at least well documented.
Yeah.
Like,
well, it got good
dang.
reviews. I don't want to, like, if I'm going to read really depressing political stuff, I need it to be good.
And I love seeing, well, anything but nonfiction written not by a cishet white man.
Yeah. I mean, she's a blonde woman.
Yes, she
but
looks
still.
like a very white-looking
She
woman.
is a quintessential white woman, but I am looking forward to it. Something a little more fun, The Robber Girl by Franny Billingsley. I don't even remember what this is about. It's not the Robber Girl from The Winter Queen. Have you read The Winter Queen?
No.
It's a Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale.
Oh, okay.
And like all the characters that the main girl meets on her little quest to save her friend have names like the Robber Girl or the nice neighbor or whatever. You know, fairy tale names.
Gotcha.
So this is not that. But like, have you read her other book, Franny Billingsley? She wrote a book called Chime that I read my last year of college.
Rings no bells.
So it was 2012, and it's basically, it's this girl in this struggle to save her younger sister, I think it is, or her younger sibling from her stepmother.
Ooh.
it's a book about guilt, and so something happens to the sibling, and she feels she's responsible, and she just hates herself so much.
That doesn't sound like a Gabi book.
Her emotional arc is learning not to hate herself.
Aww.
And so, like, once she hit that point, I just burst into tears. It's such a good book.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, do recommend that one.
Okay.
That's why I bought it, because Franny Billingsley, like,
Gotcha.
I don't think she publishes very often either. So, like, she's only got a couple of books out.
Well, there's a very excellent looking knife on the cover.
I know.
So.
Somebody holding a knife. What's not to like, really? 3 more books. One of them is Agrippina, the most extraordinary woman of the Roman world.
Ooh.
She was, I can't remember who she was married to, but she was like one of the first women in the transition from the Roman Republic into the Roman Empire. So when Julius Caesar and Augustus took over. And one of them, I think it was, oh no wait, she's the mother of Nero. Never mind. It's still the same dynasty. It's just not like that far back.
I mean, I'm not familiar enough with any of this to like be able to contradict anything you're saying. So
Yes.
you could be saying anything about history right now, and I'd be like, yeah, when that happened.
Almost minored in classics.
I hear he got stabbed. That's where I'm at.
Nero?
No,
I
Caesar.
was like,
Sorry.
I don't think that's what he's known for. I almost minored in classics. I loved all those classes. I loved learning about all the weird minutiae and their calendar and their like their religious days. And I took a class on Pompeii once, and it was like a year before I went to Pompeii, so it was perfect. I still remembered everything. I had a map of the city in my head.
Wow.
I could look at exposed brickwork and tell you what style it was.
Wow.
Like, it was an intense class.
That sounds incredible.
I don't remember most of it, but like, I mean, it's been 10 years or whatever. So, yeah. So I have this one, Agrippina by Emma Southon?
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 I don't know.
I don't know. It'll be in the show notes. And then a fatty old book by Adrian Mayer called The Amazons.
Ooh.
Lives and legends of warrior women across the ancient world.
I
So,
like that
oh my god, the
cover.
print is tiny. Oh my god, this is a huge book. I do really love the cover.
I love the cover. That's incredible.
We'll have a picture in the show notes, but it's yellow with spears and a woman on a horseback, and
I might need
so.
to. And again, the last 100 pages is
Or more
bibliography,
notes.
index, and notes.
I'm
but,
really excited.
Wow.
So
Ooh, and there's a middle color folio
Ooh,
thing.
pictures. Does it smell good?
It does smell good.
Good.
Sorry, I like smelling books, okay?
So these two have been on my TBR for a while, but I'd really like to write. I'm sure I've told you this before, but I really want to do a YA adventure story where Ariadne, who gave Theseus the twine to get through the Minotaur maze.
Oh, that Ariadne.
Yeah. The woman,
The one, the one we
girl.
talk about all
I
the
mean,
time.
they're all youths, so it would.
Yes.
It's perfect for a YA.
True.
More prodigies. So Ariadne, who helped Theseus defeat the Minotaur, and
they got
Icarus,
screwed,
and they got screwed over so hard.
Fork that guy.
Yeah, man. And then Icarus, who is in her same generation and living, he was locked. Yes, his dad designed the maze for the Minotaur, and then Ariadne's dad was freaking nuts, so he locked up Icarus and his
He's
dad.
the king of Crete, right?
Yeah, Minos.
Right. Yeah.
And so he locked him up in a tower so that no one could ever find their way through the maze. And then, of course, his dad built them wings, and they jumped out and were trying to fly to safety, and then Icarus got too high, his wings melted, and he fell into the ocean and died.
Or did he?
Yeah. Exactly. But, they're the same generation, and there was a big divide between, they would have never met because she was a princess, a girl, and they kept all their women sort of sequestered away. But, like, I have this headcanon where they're BFFs, and I just really want them to save each other.
Yes.
So after I finished my current work in progress, that's what I want to work on.
Yay.
Thus all of the Roman Greek stuff.
One
more book. This one's called The Corpse Queen.
What an excellent title to end on.
And look at this cover.
Whoa.
It's a shovel in a coffin.
A blood-stained shovel
With
in
a pretty
coffin.
red-
with a pretty bow.
Red bow. It's a black bow.
So good.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. It's one of those books where, like, the girl's parents die and she goes to live with her, like, eccentric aunt or something who turns out digs up dead bodies and sells them to medical schools and wants her to take over the family business.
Yes, please.
So, a nice, wide selection. I'm so excited to start reading.
What an excellent looking pile.
I know.
So, another book you read last time that we didn't end up mentioning at all is The Beast Player by Nahoko Uehashi, translated by
Cathy Hirano, I believe.
Yeah. And you said you were kind of lukewarm on that one, right?
I was. Part of it was the prose is, like, really gentle and flowing, and so I would only read it before bed.
Lyrical?
Like, what?
Lyrical, you might say. Doesn't she kind of have a lyre that she
Oh,
plays?
yeah.
Sorry, I was trying to make a pun.
You tried.
I
You
tried.
did try. So, like, it was fine. I had a hard time, like, I didn't understand the descriptions of the beasts, the royal beasts.
Oh, I mean, you probably didn't see
So, like, I mean,
the cover of The Beast Warrior.
I went to go look at the cover of The Beast Player and the sequel, The Beast Warrior.
Yeah.
Because I figured that was, like, the best
way to get that image.
Yeah, but, like, it doesn't... Like,
Winged wolves.
I really... That's sort of what I came up with, but, like, I really just wanted, like, a diagram.
Yes. Oh, that would have been fun to have an anatomical...
know!
Oh, okay.
So...
yeah,
Missed
so-
opportunity.
I think I ended up giving those books about 4 stars because they were the kind of thing where it was beautiful and it was different, but it wasn't, like, gripping or
Earth-shattering.
Or, yeah, exactly.
Or whatever, yeah.
And you specifically, I think, were interested in what I had to think from an animal behavior standpoint, because that's kind of my background. So, so this has been a while now for me. So the Beast Player is basically a, would you say a Bildungsroman of?
I was gonna say, like, a parable.
Oh, I was thinking, like, this girl.
But,
It
yeah,
starts with
it
this
is a
girl,
Bildungsroman.
Elin.
And she is biracial, and her mom's side are, like...
You already remember way more about this than
I read
But
it
there
in,
is,
like,
yeah, I guess there was that.
May.
So a lot of that comes through, I think, at the beginning of the first one, and then is not often brought up again.
It's true, but yes. There are these 2 mythical creatures in this world, and one of them is like a Gyarados.
A what?
That Pokemon that's like a...
I missed the Pokemon scene.
Did you really?
I did. I was too busy reading.
I thought for sure you would understand that reference. Okay, it's like a big... You know what? I bet the people listening will.
Yes. Yeah, so everyone else will know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, so that... I mean, like, I pictured them as, like, big, sort of, like, snake-like with these really armored scales and, like, these terrifying teeth.
So I actually,
swim.
after I finished this, went back and looked up the manga, because this originated as a manga.
I didn't realize it was a manga.
And in the manga, they look like alligators, like big.
Oh.
Which was not, like, I had sea serpent in my head.
Yeah.
But at least the way they came out in the manga was they look like
I'm gonna
alligators.
Google Gyarados for you.
Yeah,
Because my brain can't move past that.
That's fair.
Didn't get into the Pokemon. What?
I just kind of missed it. Like, I guess, like, none of my friends were, like, really into it at the time, and I was too busy reading and...
See, it's like this thing.
Okay. Like, I recognized the picture. I just...
Yeah, okay. Well,
But
that's what I pictured.
That's similar to what I had in my
Yeah.
head, too. Like, yeah.
So there are these two magical types of creatures, and the royal beasts, which are the wolves with wings, are like they have a couple in captivity. The Empress has a couple in captivity, but like they don't know anything about them.
They're like royal symbols, but no one...
The care they put into these creatures is like sort of subpar.
Yeah, it's very superficial, like,
And it's
barely
based
enough
on
to keep them
tradition
alive. Yeah.
rather than like the health of the animal.
So a lot of this book is kind of an ecological mystery, like trying to parse out scientifically what these, like how these animals do
should
what they
be
do.
cared for, and how they
for.
behave in the wild, and how you can replicate that behavior and the care that they take for themselves in the wild in a domesticated setting.
And how can you get them to breed, too? That was a big part of it.
Yeah, that was a big part of it. And so, I mean, I have taken a grand total of 1 animal welfare classes ever, and so, but like even I knew that like most of the book where she's like, the main character is convinced that the royal beasts will like understand her, and like if she bonds with them, they will bond with her equally, and they won't like be wild animals to her because they're friends, and that got a bit wearing.
Yes, that's the part that made me cringe. I do think they almost handled that very well, because that's definitely her take when she's young, and then there are some things that happen that make her kind of like rethink that position, and like kind of checks, like very temporarily, it feels like checks her thoughts on like, oh, I guess these are wild animals, and you can only connect with them to a point. Right. Like they cannot
because
be fully
not
domesticated.
Yeah.
Yes. So they almost did that well, but you're right, like that, but it seemed, especially by the end, that the underlying message was...
Keep trying.
Keep trying! Like, one day you will form this amazing magical
unbreakable bond,
yeah, that comes from a place of compassion, and that's how we should relate to...
These animals.
Yeah. You've got some of that vegan... There was some, like, the ultra-vegan messaging coming through with some of the, like, bee stuff. Like, because I know one of the, like, ultra-vegan positions is that honey is not vegan because bees produce honey. And I think some of that was coming through at the beginning because of... She was staying with a beekeeper,
for a while, yeah.
So there was some of that, like... killed a bee, or I don't know. I don't remember. I remember that's where I first got the, wow, there's some ultra vegan messaging going on. I didn't get that here, there.
But
like I said, it's been a while.
Yeah.
But.
I mean, it's been like almost a year for you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I will say the one part that really stood out to me, and not in a good way actually, is this sort of relates to what I was talking about in our intro episode, where I was saying that like, when you read as many books as I do, there's going to be a lot of repeats within a genre. And so, like, there's this moment at the end where this royal beast, the wolf with wings, that she has bonded so deeply with, and then they had that setback where she's like, oh, well, they're a wild animal, and et cetera, et cetera. So the royal beast, she gets, like, thrown into the air at one point during the big final battle, and the beast catches her in her mouth. In its mouth? I think it's a her, though.
Yeah.
And they fly away together.
She has a baby.
Right. Yes.
I don't know if she has the baby in the first one or the second one.
She doesn't have a baby in the final battle, but earlier she has a baby. That's how we know she's female.
Right.
Okay. So the main character gets thrown into the sky.
Like you do. Or,
like, jumps from really high up or something, and the royal beast catches her in its mouth. And they fly away together, and it's this great ending. And there's this very specific detail where, because she's, like, a wolf with wings, she has, like, those carnivore teeth. But it turns out that she has, like, this massive, like, area of gums with no teeth in the back of her mouth. So, like, that's how she didn't spear the main character carrying her away. It was really weird, and it stuck with me. And so I was reading this other dragon book at the same time, and the main character jumps out of a 8-story window or something, hoping to God that her dragon will catch her.
Oh boy.
I know.
Trustful!
And the dragon caught her, and they had to be careful because of her teeth. But she didn't have the gums. But I distinctly remember thinking while I was reading the dragon thing, like, didn't this already happen?
They're blurring together.
And it just wasn't, I didn't find it an amazing book. And then to have that specific, it's not even a trope, but it's a thing that happens regularly enough with flying creatures.
It happened
who
too
will
close
like
to-
catch
yeah.
the main character.
And I mean, the book was mostly about these, like, sussing out these ecological mysteries and, like, her relationship with the beast. So there wasn't, like, character interactions to really develop. Like, there are other characters, but everyone feels very emotionally removed from
They
each
do.
other. And they're all,
And
like,
I
there's
think
all the
part of that's
political
the prose. Like it,
and some of that might be translation, like
yes.
kind of
That
an
was another
artifact of
thing, is that I
translation.
wasn't sure, like, how much of the prose that I didn't care for was the translation.
Right.
And, like how close the translator wanted to keep the English to the Japanese.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, like, I didn't hate it, but, like, I wouldn't.
It was
I didn't-
interesting, it was different, and it had some... I thought some of the ways they approached some of the, like... None of them were obviously very formalized experiments, but, like, some of the ways they approached this indirect... Like, how you indirectly approach an ecological problem is actually the side of animal behavior I really like, thinking outside of the box and, like... Because there are a lot of assumptions that go into animal care, especially when you've been doing things a certain way for a very long time, and I thought, like, some of that... But I also thought it was... The idea that she was the first one to come along and be like, and try, like, the one thing, like, I don't, so.
For generations, and suddenly she's the only one. And, like, they sort of ascribed that to, one, her not being, like, raised in the same, like, doing the same chores and tasks and being around the royal beast the way everyone has, so, like, it's all new to her. But, like, they also ascribed it to her
That's
like,
right, yeah.
her racial identity, which was weird.
That was very yikes.
It was weird.
So that was
the Beast Player.
And then, what are your recent reads since the last time we spoke? We both had kind of a slow month, right?
Yeah. Mine's, I mean, September was sort of slow, but October's been really slow.
Yeah.
I think
Work got busy for both of us.
Work got sort of insane this last week. So I think I've only finished 3 books in October, which is like an all-time low for me this year. Like, by far.
I might have actually read more than you for, like, 1 book more than you.
But still.
Yeah, because I read 5, if I count the one I finished
Which
this
ones did
morning.
you read? Well, that still counts.
So I read Anxious People by Fredrik Backman, translated by Neil Smith. That one was really good.
Was it?
Was so good. That's the one Laura read. Laura, #1 fan, Laura. Shout out.
We love you.
She read it and said, you should read this. And then I read it, and I've now been like, everyone I know, you should read this.
Do you own a copy?
Oh, yes, I do.
Good. Well,
It is.
you should bring it to me.
So my mom just finished it. She finished it on the flight over. And now she's like,
I'm going to take
do
this
you
home
care?
and
give
give
it
it
to
to everyone.
everyone in the family to read.
That's okay.
So one day it'll make its way
Right.
back around
Yeah.
to you, for sure.
Or maybe they have it at the library.
That one is, it's a contemporary fiction, so not a usual genre for me. Charmingly written in, I think the original language is Swedish. I think it's a Swedish author.
Lovely.
And so it takes place in Sweden. And it's about a bank robber who, like, it's hard to talk too much about this without
Like major spoilers.
major spoilers, and also, like, ruining the narrative effect of the book, because it's very there's, like, a weird reveal every couple chapters. And so every couple chapters, everything about the narrative, like, changes and shifts. And what you think is going on isn't actually what's going on. It's
That sounds amazing.
Incredible. So the very bare bones version is there's a bank robber who attempts to rob a bank, but it's a cashless bank, so it does not go well. And the bank robber, in a panic, runs into a nearby apartment that's doing an open house and, like, accidentally takes everyone hostage because they're panicking and they don't know what to do because they didn't manage to rob this bank.
How do we make this 100 times worse?
I know. So it's funny. It's so full of heart. I will say trigger warning because suicide comes up, like, is like not a major theme of the book per se, but it is like there is a suicide that underlies a lot of, like, in the past that underlies a lot what's happening now. So that does come up. And it's not clear at all from the synopsis that is involved at all. So, fair warning to everyone that suicide is talked about.
Know that going in.
Yes. And it is a major part of a lot of characters' backstories. But it's not, like, what the book is about.
Okay.
And I especially recommend it to parents. There's a lot of, like... like how, like, the weird dynamics of being a parent and how, like, everyone's just, and adults in general, just, like, doing their best to get through it. And I honestly, like, I don't think I can recommend it enough. It was very good.
I had no idea you loved it so much.
It was so great. It's just, like, again, it's hard to talk about.
Right. Okay.
But yes, I think everyone should read it.
Maybe they have one at the library. I'll pick it up.
So that was actually probably the highlight of the month. And then I read the Simon Snow trilogy, which we won't talk about too much because you picked up the copies from me, so I was going to wait for you to read those.
From the
at
sound
least the first
of it, though, I think I might just end up reading the first one.
So I was telling Smack earlier today, the first one stands really well on its own. It was intended, I don't think it was originally intended to be a trilogy. So the first one stands just fine on its own. Had, like, plot resolves. Honestly, they reach a better resolution than they do by the end of the trilogy.
Man.
So unless you reach the end of the first book loving the characters and wanting to live in that world, because the world is incredible, the world building she does. If you want to experience that more, if you want to, like, live more with the characters, one of the side characters, Penelope, does not get, like, as much screen time as she deserves in the first book, and she gets a lot more over the next 2 books. And there's another side character introduced in the second book who is delightful. Love him, Shepherd. And he gets increasingly more screen time as the trilogy goes on. And Agatha, who I ended the first book just, like, not liking, like, could not stand Agatha. She grew more on me. Never ended up, like, loving her, but, like, she became more interesting of a character after the first book. Everyone's interested. It's interesting what Rainbow Rowell, like, how she approached some of these very, like, classic fantasy and, like, school magic tropes.
Academic school,
and, like, very much, like, approached some of, like, the underlying trauma that should be there after, like, all these things, like, that happen in other classical wizard school books we can mention. So she explores some very interesting themes about, like, you know, like, becoming an adult, like, doing that transition from teen to adult and being taken advantage of as a kid, like, by adults in power who are using children as their pawns in their power plays and stuff. And family, like, how family plays into that. Like, so there were some very interesting things. It definitely made me think. I came off of that trilogy just, like, staring at my ceiling, just trying to process all these thoughts and feelings. So it was very interesting what she did. I would not call it a very, like, warm ending, like, emotionally plot resolved, but it wasn't worth the 3-year stress freak out after the second book. But I would read them again now, knowing, like, now that I know everything that happens, I don't have to stress about what might happen. And I could so it was...
Just enjoy the ride, basically.
So I would say for anyone else going through this journey, if you come off the first book and you had a grand old time and you don't want it to get worse, just enjoy the first book. Don't. I'm still just thinking about it. Anyway, and then I read, I'm going to butcher this because never took French, but Arsène Lupin.
We're American. I think you're allowed to call him Lupin.
Lupin! It's just weird because I watched the show in
the
French.
Netflix show. Yeah.
And so I'm, like, I can hear it in my head in flawless accented French.
It's not the original, like, gentleman thief from, like, the 1800s?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, it's the original, well, translated to English, obviously,
Right.
but it's, so the author, Maurice LeBlanc, like, it started as, like, a serial in, like, a local newspaper or magazine or something, so he started releasing, someone was like, hey, I don't know if he just did it for fun, they explained it in the intro. The introduction is written by this guy, Michael Sims, I think, who is a hilarious fanboy of Lupin and Maurice LeBlanc, and like watching him like fanboy over this was very funny. I don't often read introductions, but this one was worth it. He was very funny, but I don't think he was intending to be funny, but he was funny.
Just the enthusiasm.
Yeah, just very ride or die for the whole series. I don't even know who he is, because he's not the translator. The translator is Alexander Teixeira de Mattos? Mattos?
We'll have that spelling in
Yeah.
the show notes.
So this is like and I guess they translated a bunch of those and recompiled them into different volumes for the translation. So this is the first of those. So yes, the original series, it's like kind of, he cherry-picked. So it's not like
The whole okay.
Yeah, it's like some from different periods of the times because there's like a series from when Lupin is a thief, and then there's like a transitional period where he became more of a detective.
Oh, really?
Like reform criminal thing, and like, and then there's another weird time period where he like had a different alias.
But
So
was
there's
still
somebody
a
is like a
thief.
hero. Well, he's not a
Oh.
thief. He's like kind of it's weird because he's like wooing. It's like told from the point of view of this woman, Hortense Daniels.
Okay.
So she's not the main character, but she's kind of the narrative point of view.
Like Watson.
Yeah,
Dr.
yeah.
Watson, yeah.
So, except more useless, because you know,
'Cause it's a woman.
It's a woman in the early
1800s.
1900s,
Whatever it is.
whenever it was. So
That's fun. That's interesting though, because I saw most of the pilot on Netflix, and it's very much like a modern story. Like there's a red sports car that goes through the top of the Louvre or something.
The Netflix show is about a modern day criminal who is a Lupin fan. So he read all the stories as a kid and is like modern day heist, but all of his stuff is inspired by
the stuff
all
that you
these-
read.
yes.
Okay.
So that's how it all connects. It's very
I
interesting.
like that.
The writing style is very like Sherlock Holmesy. So
Yeah.
anyone who likes that like writing style in that time period and can like cringe their way through the racial microaggressions and the treatment of women.
Anachronism is. Never mind. I apologize.
It's okay. We knew what we were talking about. And the way they treat women. It's like,
lots of fun.
Boy. but it's mostly about the heists,
which is important.
and how done it. Not so much who done it, because you always know who done it, but how done it.
I like that.
So I finished that this morning. Now I'm reading Lumberjanes, volume 7.
Oh, you kept going.
Oh yeah. I love those. Are like a very great
really
palate
cute.
cleanser,
Yeah.
and like these are graphic novels. The one I'm reading right now was authored by Shannon Waters and Kat Leigh, who did Snapdragon.
Another excellent graphic novel.
Such another great, excellent graphic novel. But it's about these girls at camp.
They're like
learning to
Girl
be-
Scouts, but they're not. It's very much like a surreal
Weird fantasy stuff
Yeah.
is always going down.
And-
it's bizarre and fun.
like the Girl Scouts are like very
It's
like there's certain expectations in the Lumberjanes that you would never find for Girl Scouts. Like
the badges they have to do are simply incredible. Some of it is very typical, like do a craft thing,
Right.
And like as a team, like your cabin has
cake
to
decorating.
yeah, cake decoration. But then like werewolves show up.
Yeah.
to-
And like some of the badges are like fighting in the woods at midnight.
Yeah.
Like swimming through a monster infested lake or whatever.
Or like they'll be normal sounding badges, but they'll satisfy them by going through these insane, fantastical
Right.
adventures. And then it's like, we tick this very normal sounding box after we've helped a mermaid join a rock band.
Right.
So those are very fun.
They
I
are
love
fun.
those. And friendship.
Yeah. It's like a big group of girls,
It's
right?
a solid group of girls.
Yes.
Having a time.
I think I read the first, like, 4. But, like, I don't know. I'd get them through the library and it'd be so long between them.
Yeah.
I just, like, fell off my radar.
Yeah, I forget. And that one in Giant Days, I like, if I can remember, I like
Giant
grabbing
Days,
those as
I OD'd on.
palette
I read, like, 11 in a week or something. And then I was just, like, done.
So what are your recent?
My recent first book I read this month was Whipping Girl
That one was good.
by Julia Serano. And that one was really interesting. It examines how we use language to define and to describe trans people, specifically trans women.
Yes.
And so, like...
And femininity in general.
Yeah.
She talks a lot about how...
femininity is so looked down upon that, like...
Any association.
Yeah. That there's this, like... One of the chapters talks about this weird ephemomania, where any sort of femininity in a man, or in a trans woman specifically, is just, like, it sends researchers absolutely nuts. Because they're, like, so obsessed with this guy who wants to be a woman. Why would he want that? Blah, blah, blah. But, like, this book is, like, the original progenitor, I guess, of the terms transmisogyny, which is specifically misogyny directed against trans women, instead of just, like, transphobia, which didn't really cover enough of the aggressions that trans women suffer. Specifically trans women suffer. And so it was a really, really interesting book. And it
So
was a
fascinating.
re-release in, like, 2011 or something. So it's been a while since the second edition came out. But, like, everything's still applicable.
Oh, yeah.
The only thing that stands out that she was talking about in the intro for the second edition was that, like, she specifically chose to use the word transsexual woman instead of transgender woman, because she was like, the terms keep changing and this works. So
I listened to the audiobook on that one, and that's one of the ones where she narrated her own.
Oh, that would be interesting.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. It was kind of a long book, but I really enjoyed it, and all of it
I
was
didn't realize
really
how long
interesting.
it was going through.
Yeah,
the
it's like
audiobook. It
more than 350 pages.
I think it only took me like 2 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did look, because you told me you listened to the audiobook, but that's like 11 hours.
Oh.
And I was like,
I think that is when I was going on, like, my really long... I must have gone on a really long walk that day. And then I remember I was listening to it while I was doing all my chores.
Yeah.
So... And she was just... It was just really well read. She was a great voice.
and it's super readable, too. I think there were some parts... I have this trans woman character in my current work in progress manuscript that I don't want to screw it up and hurt people. So I've done, like, a lot of research over the last 2 years, however long I've been writing it. But, like, so there was a lot of stuff that I was already familiar with, so that, like, when she went into deeper detail about it, like, I could follow quite easily. And so in that respect, it was, like, I'm really glad I read it now instead of a year ago or whatever, when I think there were parts I would have struggled through.
So that was, like, the opposite experience for me, because this is actually, I think, the first work I've read by a trans woman, especially, like, directed for...
Like, nonfiction?
Nonfiction, yeah, specifically for, as, like, an ally trying to learn more, because usually all the sources I've come across so far, like, are news articles or things that come up on Twitter or Tumblr, and that's a very
Teen
different
Vogue.
kind of exposure. And this was, like, all consolidated in one place, and so it was...
and it covered so many different angles.
Lots of angles, lots of ground, lots of things, like, I never even, like...
And her, like, I really appreciated that, like, not only was it easy to read and very clear, but, like, she's a trained geneticist.
Yeah.
So, like, she talks about science and she knows what she's talking about, and she just refutes all of these, like, insane stereotypes, which was really cool to have someone so smart and so, like, knowledgeable go through everything, just, like, thing by thing, and it was a good book. So I read that. I also read Minor Feelings by Cathy Park Hong.
That's on my TBR.
It's a short little thing, and it's 6 or 7 essays about race. So the full title is Minor Feelings, An Asian American Reckoning by Cathy Parkong. And I don't read a ton of nonfiction that are just straight, like, personal essays. More than nonfiction I tend to read is, like, informational, like Whipping Girl or the Mussolini book I just bought. Strong Man, yeah. Like, two... like, very opposite books.
Spectrum there.
Very different books. So, like, I don't have a whole lot of experience with non-fictional personal essays. Creative nonfiction, it's called. And I always enjoy it when I read these things, but I don't always have the words to describe why I liked it.
Right.
But this one, I really enjoyed how sideways she approached everything. She never came out and was like, these are what microaggressions I've received. This is how it felt. It sucked. This is what happens. It was very sideways. In one of the essays, she tells us stories about her college experience with these two other Asian women. And one of them had suffered this horrendous family tragedy, but didn't want Cathy Parkong to tell us what it was, so we don't know. And there's this whole, like, excerpt where, like, there's dialogue in the middle of this essay, and they go to, like, a cafe or whatever, and her friend is like, our friendship is on the line. You may not tell anyone that this was me. And she was like, there's a pseudonym, and she's like, I don't care. People will know. And I don't want to be associated with this tragedy.
Oof.
I know. So you get to see that friend and another friend that they lived with in college. And the other one, she was bipolar or schizophrenic or something. It sounded bipolar. So, like, this other woman, they were all artists. And they were all artists before she turned to writing. And so, like, this mentally ill woman that she loves dearly, but who is super volatile. She describes these adventures they have together and what it was like to be one of the only Asian people in the art department, basically. And she tells stories that relate back to the thesis of all these essays, but her thesis is never quite so straightforward as, like, a think piece you might read. Like, in one of the essays, she talks about how growing up in Koreatown in LA, there were girls who were much cooler than her and much tougher than her that spoke with black sense. And so when Crazy Rich Asians came out, the movie, and Awkwafina was criticized for her, like, black scent, which I haven't seen the movie, I don't know. But that's what she talks about in the essay. And she was like, so if everyone accuses Awkwafina of performing blackface, is that what these Korean girls were doing? Like, I never thought of it that way. And I read it like 4 times, that part, and I genuinely couldn't tell whether it was a criticism of the girls or of the cultural criticisms of Awkwafina.
Right.
And like, I went to a school where it was like 55% Asian and 45% white, and so, like, all of the cool girls did that, and most of them were Asian, a couple of them were black, but, like, I distinctly remember when an Asian girl became cool, she started talking like that.
Fascinating.
Yeah, and so, like, it was a nice neighborhood, not as nice as where my parents live now, but, like, when I moved to our current neighborhood, like, people would treat my old neighborhood like it was, like, the ghetto or something. It was not at all. There were just a lot of Asian people around.
Right.
So, I mean...
So I had no idea that was even a thing.
Yeah.
Any of that.
I'd sort of forgotten about it, but, like, it all came back very clearly when she was talking about it.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so, like, she's a little older than we are, so she was quite young, but she was aware when the riots in LA, like, 92 happened, and by that point, they had, like, just the year before, 2 years before, moved out of Koreatown to this, like, nice white neighborhood. And so she talks about, like, what it was like to watch, but be completely removed from this small island of Koreans as the whole neighborhood burned and people died, and, like, so everything's race related, but it's all, she comes at everything from a slanted perspective. And I really, like, it's just so such intelligent writing. I really enjoyed it.
Cool.
Like, it makes me want to go read more essays. So what else have I read? Oh, Empire of Wild by Cherie Dimaline.
You were looking forward to that one so much.
I know, I had really high expectations for it.
Never have high expectations.
These were sort of like ridiculously too high expectations. So it was good.
I feel like it was like the premise sounds like it
premise
ticks
is amazing.
all of your boxes.
It really does, yeah. So the premise is that it's this woman has been searching for her husband, who just up and disappeared one night 11 months ago, and she is completely lost without this man. They're ridiculously deeply in love. They had their first fight, and he walked out and then vanished.
Oh no.
And so she is all sorts of fucked up about it. And she's, I hope I'm saying this right, it's Mattos, Metis,
Okay.
which is a tribe of indigenous people in Canada who intermarried. They're from the Saskatchewan River and Red River areas, and they intermarried with like French colonialists.
Mm-hmm.
So they're both super Catholic and also follow all of their like tradition.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they don't go into lodges or anything, but like they are Catholicized, but also have all these other
Sure.
parts of their culture that weren't. But one of the things that, this might be like a gross generalization, but one of the things I think that came over with the French people was the idea of a werewolf. Because by the time France, or like French trappers or French Canadian trappers, whatever, there was this animal that killed 100 people over a series of years in France. And they called him the Beast of Gévaudan. And so, like, he is the original French werewolf. And the people who came over from France would have known that story.
Sure.
And so, from what I can tell, it seems like they imported werewolves to this indigenous community. And they're called Rougarou.
Literally.
Yeah. So they're called Rougarou, except the French version of a werewolf is a loup-garou.
I recognize that.
Yeah, you know that one. And so basically, you become a Rougarou if you mistreat a woman.
Yeah.
If you, like, at all. It's really scary.
Good.
Like, or if you betray your people in some way.
Good. Yeah.
Or if, I don't know, there are like 2 or 3 other things that come up, but like those 2, you spend the book going, so which one was it? Like, how did this happen? And there's this sort of like mystery of like, who exactly is a Rougarou? Because she finds
You
her
can always-
the premise though is that she, after searching for her husband for 11 months, she's been like drinking and like not taking care of herself.
Sure.
She goes to a Walmart parking lot a night when she's like, or a morning when she's just like ridiculously hungover, and there's like a tent revival thing going in, and she wanders in, and it was like sort of quietly making fun of everyone, and then the reverend for the tent revival comes out, and it's her husband. And he has no memory of her, and like she like freaks out and like barfs on his shoes because she's outrageously hungover and so shocked that she just like is ready to faint, and completely disgraces herself basically in front of these like Christian types.
Horrifying.
I know.
Hate this.
I know. So like all of the Christian types spend the rest of the book being like, oh, this druggy native woman. I know, it's fucked up. But like the book is her like fighting to bring her husband back.
Sure. Yeah.
And so it reminded me of this like weird screenshotted Tumblr post that makes the rounds every now and then on social media, where like the various myths of how to turn a werewolf back into a person, and one of them is like you just throw your clothes at their clothes at the werewolf, and it's supposed to be like, all right, I'm a person. Or if someone who loves the werewolf like calls them home.
Yeah.
And so like the post goes off in this really funny direction where they're like, George, put your pants on. But like, so that post goes around every couple of years.
I haven't seen that part of it, but I have seen parts of this Tumblr thing. Yes. Usually it's a very like artistic suite, someone like reaching out their hand and then oh boy. I like that.
So I kept thinking of that while I was reading this. Because
juxtaposition.
But she gets some help from this elder in her community to like use indigenous like medicine to turn him back into a human, to make him remember her, because she knows if he would just remember her, he would come home, they're deeply in love, blah blah blah. And it was like, it's such a great premise, right? But like, it wasn't as propulsive a story as I was expecting, because there would be these moments where like Joan is the main character, but like we circle off to various secondary characters and then we get their whole backstory. So it wasn't, there was a lot of backtracking,
forward momentum.
Yeah, a lot of like a little more navel gazing than I was expecting.
Okay.
Which slowed the pace down a lot, not too much.
Right.
But like the thing that I think kept me from like connecting very deeply with the story was that like we get all these anecdotes about how great Victor, her husband, is, and when he's brainwashed, his new name is Eugene Wolfe with 2 F's, which is like both hilarious and terrifying. So like we get anecdotes from her about how wonderful he was to her, and like how much they just were like fucking all the time, and like they'd go on road trips. And, I know, right? I mean, that's sort of like good for you, but like I didn't get enough romantic stuff.
No warm feelings.
Yeah, it was just screwing. And like he's a good guy. And so we got like a couple moments where we go into his head and he's trapped in a forest.
Bummer.
He's trapped on her land, basically.
Okay.
And can't escape, and everything's dark. And as she comes after him, it changes, and it gets better, and then it gets worse, and then it gets better, type thing of like, how close is she to rescuing him?
Okay.
And there's this one line that really stood out because it was what I'd been searching for, and it's like this line of describing him as having been made loop by loop and stitch by stitch for her.
Ooh.
And like, so that's a really good romantic line, but like there was so much sex and less like why do you actually love this guy?
Right.
And they were equated as the same thing, which like I mean, like,
I'm sure that works for some people.
I'm sure it does work for some people. It's just not my thing. I mean, it ended at a really weird place too. Like, I'm still not sure how I feel about the ending.
Like how we both had weird endings.
Yeah, with the Simon Snow trilogy. Yeah, I still don't know how I feel about it. But it was a really interesting read, and it was just nice to read something that wasn't by like a white woman.
It usually is.
And like really good imagery.
Yeah.
And really, really creepy in some parts. But it wasn't quite horror, I don't think. It wasn't like very dark horror. Like I'd say Mongrels is darker. Okay. Mongrels by Stephen Graham Jones, which is maybe not a fair comparison, but
I bet you The Devourers is dark.
Yeah. The Devourers is dark as fuck, man.
But so good. I don't even really like dark stuff, really, but I love The Devourers.
I'm not usually a horror fan. I'm not usually a big horror fan.
I was gonna say, I think of you as a horror fan because of the fact that you
do you know
are like, hey, read The Devourers, read Mongrel.
Apparently, the author of The Devourers, he posted on Twitter in the last couple of weeks that like he earned out and he's starting to get royalty checks from that book. And I was
good
like,
for you!
Yay! Make that money!
Oh, that's actually one that I don't own yet. I should go ahead and get that one.
Yes, you should. The U.S. cover is gorgeous.
Oh, so for once,
I know
the U.S. cover.
I have the Canadian cover, and it's nice, but like the U.S. cover is gorgeous, gorgeous. So yeah, that's been the reads I finished this month.
And then you started the Rhysling.
I'm only like a third of the way through. It's the 2021 Rhysling Anthology, which includes every speculative poem that was nominated for the 2021 Rhysling Prize.
Oh.
So it's just a giant book of speculative poetry. And it's interesting because I have found it really hard to find sources of just like big sources of speculative poetry.
It never even occurred to me that would be a thing until like this year.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's starting to like become more of a like, people are more aware of it. And so it's been really nice to just, like, keep reading and just, you know, read the ones I don't like once and read the ones that I do like 4 or 5, 6 times. And it's interesting because it's sort of teaching me what kind of poems I do like as I go. And some of them are really good. It's sort of like that Mary Oliver stuff, except they talk about, like, bloody hands on windows and Narnia and, like, witches' familiars.
I think you posted one on Twitter that was about, like, sirens.
I put
or
2 up.
selkies
One of them was about selkies. One of them, it was like, it was really pretty, and it sort of turned the whole selkie myth on its head because, like, it's this selkie who goes back to the sea and doesn't want to abandon her husband, and it doesn't say, like, why she went back or what happened or anything, but that, like, going back feels like drowning. And then there was this other one sort of excoriating everyone around Helen of Troy for, like, treating her like an object. I really liked that one. And then there's another one that I just read that I really liked. The title is Kings and Queens of Narnia, and it talks about how, like, it's really easy to disappear through a door or a portal or anything, but then the last line is, we need you, basically. This world is better with you in it, which is it's a very anti-suicide thing to say, which just makes it really, like, gentle and loving. Like, Narnia's great, but please stay here. Which, like, growing up, that would have infuriated me. But I do think it is, like, an anti-suicide poem. So it's, I mean, there's just really touching stuff in there, and some of, like, there's horror poetry too, which is great. It's just an excellent selection.
Miss, I don't usually read horror. Over here's like, I love the horror poetry.
If you just read all the poems, you're gonna read some horror poems.
Fair.
And then, what else am I currently reading? I just started The Deficit Myth.
Oh, right.
Which is an economics nonfiction book. It tries to get us to rethink, like, the national deficit, which I feel like is particularly appropriate with the debt ceiling nonsense happening lately.
Is. But that's, let's be real, less about the I mean, the whole point is that's less about the deficit and more about political.
Absolutely. But I think the book itself is an argument against the debt ceiling, I think.
Okay.
More on that after I've actually read it. And then the other book I'm reading that I'm really enjoying.
The one that I keep side-eyeing.
Yeah. That I have sitting next to me that you just keep staring at. The Ruthless Lady's Guide to Wizardry by C.M. Waggoner. And it is such a delight.
I'm so excited for this
It's really fun. It's kind of long, but it goes so fast. And the style is just delightful. It's sort of like something you would expect out of, like, a Victorian style story, except the main character is, like, a trash human being, and so, like, she makes up words and to describe stuff, and, like, it's just really fun. And she's broke. She's got a curse on her that if she doesn't pay her rent in 7 days with interest, like, she's gonna break out in boils on her face.
Aww.
So she goes to get this job as a bodyguard for this high-class lady who has to be in seclusion before she gets married or whatever, because she's gonna get a lot of money if she keeps this woman safe, which is, like, her goal in life. I know. There was some parts of the world building that I had trouble keeping up with. Like, there's this term householding, which is, it's like essentially building a household. And so if someone is householded, they've been, like, adopted into a family. Yeah. And it's usually, like, a middle class to upper class family. And there's this really lovely old woman who, like, it's so gently acknowledged, but she's trans. And she's a necromancer, which they call body scientist. That's the polite term for it.
The PC term for necromancer.
And so, but, like, she's just so, she's also in the bodyguarding job as a necromancer. And
bodyguard.
but, like, she starts talking to, like, I got it. Took me a second, but I got it. She starts talking to Deli, the main character, and she's like, I knew from a young age that I wanted a house full of daughters and I wanted lace curtains And I met this lovely man, Mr. Totham, that we've been married for 25 years or whatever. And we have 8 daughters householded to us. And that's when I got, like, what householding actually is.
Oh, okay.
But that was, like, 70 pages in or something.
Oh, okay.
So, like, that was sort of frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, you do get it eventually.
Sure.
Yeah. And it's just really, like, Deli meets one of the other bodyguards is, like, this, she's a troll woman. But she's, like, upper class, and she's just really nice and thinks the best of everyone around her. And Deli is, like, well, first she's like, oh my god, a prospect, someone who will household me, and I'll never have to do, like go through the dirt for, like, food or money ever again. I'll be so well taken care of. But, like, she really likes this girl. And so, like, you can see, like, as the troll girl, I've forgotten her name, it's been like 3 days since I've read it. Wynn, as, like, Wynn says these things that show that she thinks very highly of Deli keeps, like, trying to meet these, like, oh, like, maybe I don't have to be such a shit. It's so cute! And I keep waiting for everything to go wrong, which makes me really nervous. And I'm halfway through, and nothing terrible's happened yet. I don't think it'll actually get all that bad. It's not that sort of book. But I just want them to be really happy together. And I'm really enjoying it.
Good. Hope it ends well. I have the other one by her.
I know you do. Because every time I saw C.M. Waggoner's first book, Unnatural Magic or something.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful. I have to think they got the same artist.
Yeah, it's a very similar cover. But, like, every time I'd see that at the bookstore, I'd have to turn to you and physically say, "You own that one, right?"
Did I tell you how I ended up with that?
No.
So Megan and I we usually, for our birthdays and for Christmas, we end up at the bookstore and then we each, like, blind pick a book for each other. And then
so nice.
We check out and swap. And that time, I don't remember it was for our birthdays or Christmas, but independently, we both picked out Unnatural Magic and gave it to each other.
That's adorable.
It was so
That's
cute.
so cute.
So yeah, that's how I ended up with Unnatural Magic. But
I'm really excited to read that one.
Yeah, I'm excited for both.
That one has, like, blurbs from, like, Tamora Pierce.
This one. Oh, this, yeah. From Tamora Pierce, Juliette Morellier, and Alex Harrow.
Yeah, which is, like...
It's an interesting clout filled.
Yeah. I stare at that and my mouth sort of falls open and I'm like, holy shit.
I think that's it. So, until next time, thanks for listening, and here's hoping that if you fall, a beast will magically appear and catch you with its not-so-sharp teeth.
This has been another episode of Infinite TBR. You can find us on our Twitter at Infinite TBR.
And we are individually on Twitter as @WhatSmackSaid and @Gabalodon, which is like Megalodon, but Gab in the front of it. And you can find all our show notes at infinitetbr.com. If you have book recommendations for us or questions you want answered during the podcast, feel free to email us at itbrshelf@gmail.com.